everyone. We're so excited to have you here at tonight's session called Wired for Confidence. I am Megan Miley. I'm the program director at Dress for Success Twin Cities, coming from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where it is beautiful and sunny today. We are excited to be having Deb Sauder present on this topic and collaborating and working with and presenting for the Biointegrative Health International Center. So we are just absolutely thrilled to be here and to have you all here tonight. Thank you for your time. We are so excited. So let me introduce Deb Sauder to all of you. Deb Sauder is the owner of DSauder LLC and founding co-creator and facilitator of the first version of Dress for Success's Professional Intelligence Program. A professional intelligence is a program that was created based on the concepts of emotional intelligence as researched by Daniel Goleman and many, many more. Deb has a long history of working with people from all walks of life in all stages of life. She has been a business owner providing personal, professional, and leadership development to individuals and small businesses since 2005. Prior to being a business owner, Deb was working in county systems as a social worker for 20 years. Currently, she is a growth coach, certified professional assessment analyst, speaker, facilitator, trainer, and soft skills program developer, providing life strategies for personal and professional lives, one-on-one and jointly with local community providers. Deb's mission in life is to inspire people to find, own, and live out their intrinsic worth, to create a life that makes their hearts sing. And I know that singing is a big part of your life, Deb, and has been for a long time as a professional choir singer. So I love that you added that there. So everyone, welcome. So excited to have you, Deb.
Well, thank you for having me. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you here today or tonight, this evening. Some it's later and some it's a little bit earlier. So we are glad to have everyone from all time zones. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here go ahead.
Oh, very good. And I was going to just welcome you all to in the chat box if you'd like to let us know which city, state, time zone you're coming from. It's fun to see where everyone's coming from.
Okay. And can we see my screen?
Beautiful. Perfect.
All right. Yes, thank you. Oops, hold on one second. Gonna make sure that I can see it on mine. There we go. All right. Well, we're going to talk about confidence this evening. And so, we talk a lot about what is confidence? How do you become confident? And I know that a lot of us have our own idea of what confidence means. And so tonight I want to talk about how are you wired for confidence? So everyone's wired a different way. And so confidence might look different for each of us. And so some of us, like me, might be loud and pretty direct and come across as, oh, she's got it all figured out. And that's not necessarily always true. But we have this idea or story oftentimes what confidence is and what it looks like. And so I'm going to challenge us to create some new ways of looking at confidence and really do some internal work as to what does it mean to be wired for confidence, and what does that mean for me, and what might that mean for somebody else, and so that I can see different perspectives. Please know that if you have questions, you can put them in the chat there. We hopefully will have a little bit of time towards the end where we can actually address some questions. I also want you to think about what are your biggest takeaways from this evening. So not only what questions do you have, but what are some of those jewels that you find are very opening for you and something that you want to take with you that you can put and implement right away. So that's the goal for this evening. All right, shall we begin? So, like I said, we oftentimes wonder, what is confidence? So there's all kinds of definitions, but the one I like from Psychology Today is confidence is a belief in oneself, the conviction that one has the ability to meet life's challenges and to succeed, and the willingness to act accordingly. Being confident requires a realistic sense of one's capabilities and feeling secure in that knowledge. So, really, what we're talking about with confidence is a belief. It starts there. If you have a belief that you're confident, then your actions oftentimes will follow. If you don't believe that you're confident or you don't believe that you have that ability, then you're not going to show up as confident. So I just want you to remember that one in particular. That is one of the key takeaways I hope that you get is you have to believe it to see it. Oftentimes we want to see it and then we believe it. But when it comes to us showing up the way that we hope to show up, we have to believe that it's possible for us to be able to even act it out. So I have a little bit, what I say about confidence is it's an essential tool, and it's about, achieving and sustaining success. It doesn't look the same for everyone. And for most, it's really hard to articulate and also leverage. So you can't just always put your finger on it for yourself. And that's why we're going to start with some awareness around that. What we're going to look at next here is, how do you get to confidence, or where does self-confidence come from? And so self-confidence really it starts with self-esteem. You can't really have self-confidence if you don't have some self-esteem. And self-esteem is that knowing who you are and owning that inherent worth that you have as a person. And so knowing that you're worthy, knowing that you have worth, knowing that you have something to offer, then it starts from there. That's like the foundation. So, and your self-esteem is dependent on the belief or story that you have about yourself. So if you have a story about yourself that doesn't say that you're worthy, or that you can't have what you hope to have, or you're not worthy of receiving, then that story is going to stop you from being able to create that self-esteem. So another way in which self-esteem is created is by defining it by your mindset. So if you have a mindset that says it's not possible, or self-esteem is just one of those things that's all about huggy kissy, and it's really a flaky thing, it's not. Um, Self-esteem is foundational, and your mindset decides whether or not you have qualities that bring you that self-esteem. So I want you to be thinking about that throughout this presentation. It's very important. Mindset is really the key here. And self-esteem is going to help you function better. If you really believe that you have some worth, you believe you have something to offer, then that's going to help your brain. You're going to convince your brain that that's true because you believe it. So therefore, it will show up in your space. It's also essential to sustain outward confidence. So if your self-esteem is low, you're going to show up not as confident to others.
So Deb, as you were preparing this workshop, one of the things that you and I talked about that I think is interesting is kind of that foundational piece about self-care, which goes into the session we did last week. That I just want to do a shout out that Biointegrative Health Center will be sending the compilation of all of these sessions, these 4 sessions for the month, out at the end of the month. So if you missed self-care last week, you can listen to it in the future. So you reference that. You also reference something that we call growth mindset, which is that ability to imagine and to grow, right? And that will be next week's session. So we hope you come to that. But specifically, Deb, I would love for you to talk about and address this concept of self-efficacy. And if that's a term other people have heard of, and is self-efficacy the same as self-esteem and self-confidence?
Well, so why don't you give them your definition of self-efficacy so people
Okay.
have an understanding?
Got it. So in my mind, self-efficacy is the term, the concept that embraces growth mindset, which is to believe that you could do something you've never done before, is to have a belief in yourself that you can accomplish something you've never done before, which is, it's a huge leap of faith, right? But it
Correct.
takes a tremendous amount of self-confidence. So I'm curious how those two intersect in your mind.
Well, so they all kind of come together, right? So it's like if I think self-esteem is really in the middle. So everything kind of comes off of that self-esteem. So if we had a circle of self-esteem, then from that you can have self-efficacy, self-confidence. To be able to sustain your self-esteem is going to be that self-care, and then that mindset piece. So they all kind of all work together. And so you have to have that self-esteem to know that you have something, to you have the ability and courage to take a leap of faith, to do something you've never done before, and be okay if it turns out okay or it doesn't. And that's really part of self-confidence. Is I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm going to put forth the effort, and I'm going to learn from my results, whether they're successful or whether they're not. Self-confidence doesn't mean everything's always successful. Self-confidence doesn't mean you're always going to hit the mark. It means that I have the confidence to take a leap of faith, um, even when I don't know how it's going to end or how it's going to turn out. And
Love that
that's a
visual.
risk. So that's taking that, that's part of being wired. And we're going to learn about that a little bit later, about how are we wired to take risks. Some are not wired to take big risks. So they're going to take a different, they take an informed risk, or they're going to take a calculated risk. So they're just going to need more information. So, but it does take a risk, and you have to know that you're going to be okay if you jump off the cliff. You're not going to fall, you're going to actually soar. So now if we go into self-confidence, so self-confidence comes from trusting your abilities. Self-esteem is, I know I have abilities, I have an understanding of what they are and what I can contribute. And self-confidence is saying, I can trust my abilities because I've had some results. And I've taken action, and I've seen that what I can generate from those skills. So it's not a replacement for self-esteem, because you can tell people who have confidence, they're showing confidence, but it seems kind of empty. And so that's where some might be overconfident, some might be trying to prove something because their self-esteem may be low, where some might have an inflated self-esteem because they're not aware. They're not aware of really their results or what's happening or how they show up to others. So self-confidence is really making sure that you start with that self-esteem. It's dependent upon your accomplishments. So how do you know you're confident? You've accomplished something. Whether, like I said, whether it turned out the way you thought it would or not, there is something that you've accomplished. It's defined by your actions. You have to take action to know that you are confident, and it can easily be disrupted or sabotaged. So if we make a mistake, we criticize ourselves, we get feedback from someone else, and we felt like they're criticizing us, all of a sudden our self-esteem goes down, therefore our self-confidence is going to go down. So it's really key. And so what that really means is there's going to be some additional skills that are going to be necessary for you to be able to sustain confidence, because we're going to make a mistake. There is going to be criticism. Not everybody's going to like what you say, do, or believe. And so how do we manage that? So that comes from some additional skills. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Okay. Do you have an example, Megan, of where you realized that you showed up as confident, but you didn't really feel like you had a basis for that? Like you just had to kind of fake it till you make it?
Yeah, I could think of lots of lots of situations, and this would be another topic of interest to address sometime, is that sense of imposter syndrome too,
Yes.
which is actually the sign of a ism, racism, sexism. It shows the disparity in opportunities, right? So that's just a huge big topic we could blow up to another time. But for me, it's I came into the position I'm in now, and I skipped a couple of roles and was out of management roles, and was out of the workplace for 6 years with my kids. And my kids have some special needs, medical issues. And I, I have to say, I think I learned a lot of skills, but those skills, even though I have the skills, it's hard to express them when I was coming back into the work field, and to not necessarily have gone through a linear ladder per se of job titles, but to have hopped into a manager and a director level, for me felt like sometimes I felt kind of soft at the core. The
Yep.
self-esteem wasn't there, and yet I know I was doing and saying what appeared to be the right things. I got the job, I got the, that kind of thing, but I had to and continue have to work at my core. And specifically for me, I need to work at really treating feedback as a gift and not personalizing it as criticism of me and my personhood and my identity. So
Yep.
that's one area where I'm growing, I will say.
And that really is kind of a litmus test as far as where if your self-esteem and your self-confidence are kind of at the same level. So if you can take feedback, you don't take it personal, you see it as a growth opportunity, then you know that you can learn. That's part of self-esteem. And confidence means I can still step up and do what I need to do and be resilient, even if it didn't turn out the way I thought it would. So there's so many layers in all of these. And a lot of times we just think it has to do with how we show up. And it really is about what do we believe about ourselves so that we can show up in a way that we want to. So the next, what we're going to talk about here is around what's internal versus external confidence. So internal confidence is knowing and owning your gifts and talents. It's like, you have a knowingness that you have certain abilities, certain talents. You know that you're equipped to be able to handle certain situations and various types of situations. So you have a healthy self-image. You don't compare yourself to others, which is a very difficult for most of us to do. We love to compare ourselves. That's kind of our society seems to be built on that. Um, and so the way in which to kind of help yourself with that internal confidence is to compare yourself to your own results, not comparing yourself to others, because that has to do with them and not do with you.
Yeah, and social comparison is truly ingrained in the majority of us. It keeps us ethical, moral. It keeps us taking care of each other. It keeps us it helps us survive, right?
Yes.
And animals that live in packs do it. There's comparison is I'm doing it like everybody else, because that means if I'm sticking with it, I'm going to survive. But then the flip side of all of that is, wow, I'm really different, or I'm not as good as. And it's really easy to go down that thought process.
Right. Which robs us from the ability to reach our highest potential. So, and really
Looks like
that's
you're
the key.
frozen there. Deb, are you able to
Oops.
be coming back?
Am I here?
Come on back, Deb.
Uh-oh. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Okay, so somebody can hear me. Megan, is it on your side? think we lost Megan. Okay. Just give her one more second. Yep, she's going to come back. So I'm going to keep going here. And hopefully, if you can't hear, please let me know, or let Megan know when she comes back. And just know that this is going to be recorded and you'll be able to have a chance to go back and listen. So we were talking about that internal confidence. And really the way in which to live that out is for us to have, be able to appreciate our gifts and talents. You know, it's not enough to just say we have them. We don't believe it unless we actually acknowledge them. You got to claim your victories as well as your lessons. So, because it really is based on your results that you know that you've shown confidence in what you're doing. And then you want to avoid those self-esteem stealers. You don't want to hang around people who knock you down, and you don't want to bully yourself. I mean, you make a mistake. You ever done that? Make a mistake. You stand in front of the mirror and go, okay, that was really dumb, Deb. What were you thinking? That is a self-esteem stealer, and it's not going to serve us. So really it is, we'll go through a little process that's going to be helpful, but I'll give you a trick right now. Just looking at what's working, always start with that. What's working? What didn't work? What could I do differently? So we can kind of take the emotions out of it and just really look at the facts, and we can learn from them. Then we look at external confidence. So external confidence is always a moving target. There are times when you feel strong and ready to confront your challenges head on, but then there are other moments where you feel totally overmatched by your circumstances. You don't feel equipped to respond appropriately. And this is when you act confident, even when you don't feel confident, because there's going to be situations that how you show up is going to impact your ability to have other opportunities. And so, in the midst of it all, can you take a deep breath, still show up confident, and move forward? And so, that's going to be the key for people to see that you're confident externally. And ways in which we show that is through our body language. If we're articulating effectively, if we're managing our emotions and not, just giving up and or walking away, and then being resilient when things didn't turn out the way you hoped. So then the next part here is, how do you know you're confident? So I would like each of you to ask that question of yourself. How do I know I'm confident? And because the answer is in the question. And so there's going to be a way in which you know when you felt confident. You know when you showed up confident. You know when you've created results because of how you showed up. And so those are the kinds of things to be thinking about. But I love this quote by Jeff Hayden. It says, truly confident people don't mind being proved wrong. They feel finding out what is right is a lot more important than being right. And when they're wrong, they're secure enough to back down graciously. Truly confident people often admit they are wrong or don't have all the answers. So again, being confident doesn't mean that you know everything. Being confident means that you're confident in what you do know and you're confident in what you don't know. And if you know it, you can back it up. And if you don't know it, you'll figure it out, or you'll find the answer. So, and you can't get knocked off your balance because you didn't know something. You can't know all things. Our brains just can only hold so much sometimes. So it's okay if we say, I don't know that right now, but I'll go find that out. Or that's not my expertise, but I can connect you with so-and-so who might be better at that. So being confident doesn't mean that you know all things. It's not possible. Are you back with us, Megan?
I am back. I am
Okay.
Resilient. I came
yes,
back.
you are. Woohoo! We're so glad that you are.
Internet needed a break. And I mean, that's the piece that, if you believe that you should or you do know everything, that could be a definition of overconfidence, possibly.
Right. Right. Like if I don't know it, then that someone's going to catch me. Well, they're going to catch you. You're going to get caught no matter what. If you make them, when we make mistakes, we get caught. It's what we do about it that really shows whether we're confident. Not that we made a mistake, not that somebody found out we made a mistake. It's how we respond to it that really shows people who you are. Okay. Next slide here. So what do we need to do about knowing if we're wired for confidence? Well, the first thing you got to do is assess. What do you need to be aware of? What do you know about yourself? So this is where it's time to take that magnifying glass and kind of ask some of those questions that are really important to ask. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's been around a very long time. And it is a very important piece. This is something that everyone really should be thinking about as they think about what needs are being fulfilled. If some of my needs aren't being fulfilled, am I going to be able to really have the self-esteem that I say I want and be able to take that self-esteem and be confident in how I move forward? So for people, if their physiological needs aren't being met, it's very difficult to get to the next layer of self-actualization for us. We can't move very well. It's because we're in survival mode. So if we don't have shelter, if we don't have clothing, if we don't have the ability in which to eat, or we don't have good water, you know, we get kind of stuck there. And so those needs are the first things that are important to be met so that then we can start looking at how do we be safe? How do we make sure we have our own personal safety? We have employment, we have resources, we start to be able to meet our health needs. We have a place that we can call our own, our home. And then once those safety needs are met, then we look to find out, well, where do we belong? Who do we get to love? Where do we belong? And where's that friendship and intimate relationships and professional relationships? Where do we feel like we know we can live out our talents and abilities and people appreciate who we are? And through that, then we start to really feel like we have a good level of self-esteem. So we start to respect ourselves, we'll respect others because we're respecting ourselves. Our status might increase because we feel that we have something to offer and we can show it, we can prove it. We start getting recognized, we start seeing our strengths, and we have the freedom in which to live out those strengths because we see opportunities because of our own ability in which to have that self-esteem. And then once we get to that part, then we start looking at self-actualization. That's where becoming all that you can be. And that's where you're going to show up. You're not going to pretend to be confident. You're going to know if you're confident. And sometimes, especially we know after going through COVID and all of that, that we go in and out of each of these layers. And so they're going to impact us. And it isn't, again, that it doesn't have to stop us, but it may stop us. It's what do we do about where we're at? What are our options? How do we ask for help? How do we do that self-care so that we can continue to build that pyramid so we can get back to being the best that we can be? So this is really key to come back to when you feel like you're out of sorts. It's important to go back and go, what am I missing? What do I feel like I just don't have? Because there's a need that isn't being fulfilled. And once we fulfill those needs, then we feel like we have some gas in the gas tank. So without that, you just feel like you're running on empty. And so very difficult to sustain self-esteem if you feel like you're running on empty.
This makes me also kind of think of an acronym that we use a lot around our house, which is HALT. If we're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, which kind of spans several of those
Yes.
areas, we're not in a great place. We're not going to feel confident.
No. And you will halt. That's the whole key. Everything stops. Forward movement kind of stops because and it's then recognizing, what do I need to be able to fill the tank so I can move forward? And it does take some time you have to stop and breathe and become aware. What is it that is really the one thing that I need to focus on so I can continue to move forward? And this just gives us some ideas of things to think about. What might be missing so that we can move forward. All right. So then everybody's wired differently. And these are all the various ways. These are some of the key ways in which we're wired. So first and foremost is everyone comes to the world and to themselves with a certain mindset. We have a way of thinking, and sometimes it's conscious and sometimes it's unconscious. And so through that, we have this view of the world. We see people a certain way. We may or may not understand people as well, depending upon how clear our thinking is or where our mindset is. We might have difficult times figuring out how to practically get things done because we might not be able to see it as clearly, and we might not be able to see like where we're headed or what the expectations are or what's the bigger picture. And so that's really what we're talking about in your view of the world. And so we come to that based on our experiences, based on past experiences, based on current circumstances, and unconsciously and consciously, we create a pattern or a way in which we're thinking about the external world. And then we respond accordingly. And then same thing with our self view. So our sense of self and who we know we are, our abilities, we might see that clearly when our tank is full. We'll probably be able to see ourselves clearer, but when that tank is empty, then we start just seeing all the things that we don't have, or we start seeing the things we can't do. And so it's really important that we're understanding our sense of self, and we're aware of those unconscious and conscious things that are holding us, either moving us forward or holding us back. Then we've got that part of what's the heart of us. So what is it that gets us up to do what we do every day in the world? And that tends to be our values. It tends to be the things that drive us. So for some people, it's about being in service to others. For some, it's about being innovative and creative. For some, it's about learning. For some, it's about getting a return on their investment or making an impact in the world. So there's various ways in which there's the heart of us and why we do what we do. So, and it's important to know that why. And it's through our lens, through our perspective. And oftentimes what happens is what your why is really impacts your ability to be confident. So, because others have a different perspective. So, for example, I'm a person who is highly innovative. So then we call that a methodology, a way in which to live life. And so the way in which I live life is I like things to be innovative and creative. I like creative problem solving. I don't like to do the same things over and over. Or on the other side, there are people who have a way in which they live life that these are the certain principles and rules in which they live by. So the more extreme we have in our viewpoint of that, the more we think everyone sees the way we do, but they don't. So hence, this is where we can start having some of those tense conversations or tense interactions with others because we're not seeing from each other's perspective. And neither one is right or wrong. It is just the lens we're looking through. And we look through our values as a lens, the heart of us, and that's what gets us the energy in which to act. And so it's really important for us to understand our own values and the lens we look through, and be able to put on the glasses, the lenses of others, so that we can see their perspective, and then we can find commonalities, or we can find the value of that viewpoint.
So Deb, one of the things you're saying here is to build confidence it's important to be gaining perspective of understanding what your perspective is
Yep.
Self-awareness, and then 2 is to gain perspectives that are outside of your typical perspective, others' perspective.
Correct. Because again, we start looking at that it's right or wrong. So, and as we look through our lens, we might say, well, it's wrong to always want to change things and not follow rules. Well, it can be wrong, but it's when is it wrong? It's not always wrong. It also can be a value or a virtue, right? And when do we need structure? So again, it's looking at the situation, and we need to look from different perspectives depending upon what we're trying to achieve.
As you're talking, Deb, I'm also thinking about how critical and important confidence is in both developing and dealing with ambiguity.
Yes.
Is that confidence is absolutely needed to deal with ambiguity, and we can't really gain confidence until we have opportunities of that we deal with ambiguity. Does that make sense, that paradox?
Right. Yep. And we can't learn confidence around certain situations if we don't experience various kinds of situations that we aren't prepared to experience. Experience gives us something, and the way in which our perspective about our experiences gives us something to think about, or a way in which we interact out of. So we make up a story, or we make up an understanding based on our experiences and our beliefs. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And so when it doesn't, this is that risk. Yep. That's when the risk comes into play, to do something that's uncomfortable, and having the confidence to know I'll be okay, whether it turns out or whether it doesn't. So the next layer here is your behavior. So it's your various approach. So this is what we see most of the time. This is what we see people doing. So how they might approach problems or risk, how they're going to approach people or interactions with people, how they approach the pace of the environment, and how they approach rules and procedures set by others. So those tends to be some really key behaviors of our interactions with others. And that's going to look different. I'm going to take high risk. I'm kind of wired to take really big risk. Whereas my husband, he would never take a big risk unless he thought about it for 6 months and he knew for sure it was the outcome that he wanted, and it wasn't going to impact the family, and there was as much of a guarantee as possible. And I'm like, I don't need a guarantee. If it doesn't work, I'll just do something different. Or if the risk didn't pan out, I'll figure it out. So
and this is truly where we're talking about neurobiology. When you're using that term wired, it's literally the pathways in our brain that have been, steamrolled since genetically, environmentally, since we were little. And what I loved about this topic that you're presenting today is that we can also change our wiring.
Yes.
Right. And that's
through and the first step in that
is
awareness. Yep. It's awareness. And then it's through, regulating our emotions around that so that we can take a risk. So there's all these various layers that we kind of need to go through to get for forward movement. So yeah, but I think the key here is that my husband is very confident, and yet he's not a person that's very vocal. He's confident in what he knows, and when it's important, he says what he needs to say. I might be confident in all kinds of things because I like to learn about all kinds of things, but I may not have all of the information as an expert in certain things, but I can admit it. I'm like, here's what I do know about this. Here's what I don't. But I'm going to take the risk to share it anyway. Because even if someone says, no, that's not right. Okay.
And
Now
how do
I've learned that
we
it's not.
cultivate confidence? Because I'm also thinking kind of the opposite of confidence is fear,
Yes.
and staying back, and this idea that there are, and I know there's more than this, but 4 main fear areas for most of us, which is fear of change, fear of failure, fear of rejection, and fear of loss of control. So,
Yep.
for you, I know you don't fear change and you don't fear rejection. I know those two in particular,
Yep.
because that's part of you being innovative. And your husband may have that fear of change and may
Yes,
have
he
that fear
does.
of rejection, but not the other fears. So I think that's really interesting. And you and I both work with job seekers. So this is the area we work with a lot of individuals struggling with fear of rejection in particular and fear of failure. And so what we talk about doing is setting up ways to safely fail and safely be rejected. So I don't know if you might talk a little bit about how
Yeah,
you
we'll
coach
talk a little bit more about that as we go in another slide. So yes, bring that back because
Awesome.
that's a great thing for us to come back to. And I just
Awesome.
want to say the last thing that kind of impacts our being wired for confidence is what are the strengths that we know we have and that we leverage every day? What are those soft skills that we have, like time management, time and priority management, um, critical thinking? Those are some of the soft skills. Negotiation, leadership, um, those appreciation, those are all soft skills. And then we have our hard skills. People who know how to do certain kind of programs, like they can do Microsoft Suite, or they know how to make a certain thing, or it's those skills that we've learned that actually helps us complete a task or a job. And so with all of that, those skills and our abilities are the last part that helps us understand how we're wired for confidence, because we've either done it or we've learned about it, um, or we feel like we've got some good tools in our tool belt when things aren't necessary. We don't actually know exactly what to do, but we've got some tools that we can pull out. So those are also very important for confidence.
Well, I'm gonna practice my skill of time management here and just give you a heads up. We have 12 minutes till the hour, Deb,
Oh my
and we
goodness.
want to build in about 5 minutes for everybody to take the poll and give us feedback, because feedback is a gift, and that is how we grow as facilitators and presenters. So
Absolutely. So, and I spent the most amount of time in the beginning because awareness is the beginning. You can't really move very far without being aware. Once you become aware, then you can address what you need to address, and then you can act on what you need to act on. So these are just some questions. And again, people will be able to access this presentation, but these are some things to be thinking about. What are the questions that need to be answered for you to be able to move forward or to get to where you want to go? What do you need to address? What do you need to focus on? And so this is where that emotions comes into play, where we look at, okay, how cloudy is our vision and how does that impact our ability to have confidence? If we can't see because our emotions are in the way, we're not going to be able to show up confident. In fact, our brains won't even work. Our brains will shut down and we won't be able to think at all. And all we're going to do is react or we'll go into what we call fight, flight, or freeze. And so we'll then know we're emotionally hijacked. And really, that's just about survival. We can't think abstractly. We can't really think about what the next step is because we're just in survival mode. What do I need to do to protect myself? And our higher cortex goes right offline, and all of the skills and abilities we have kind of disappear. So the key is getting ourselves calmed down, managing those emotions, breathing to get our higher cortex to come back online so you can use the skills and abilities that you do have. The other part for thriving, the next step in that is really that emotional intelligence. And we could do many things on emotional intelligence, but really the key here is, what do I need to be aware of? How do I need to regulate myself around my perceptions, my emotions? And how do I think before I act? What do I need to be aware of about others and how others interact or how they're wired? And what do I need to understand about how to quickly create trust and rapport with others? And then kind of around all of that is motivation. You're going to need motivation for all those layers. And that's really that passion to work for reasons that go beyond whether you get money or accolades or any of those things. It's that intrinsic motivation. I'm doing it because I know it's the right thing for me to do. And I may or may not get anything out of it, but I'm still motivated to keep moving forward. Uh, and then the next thing that's really going to help you be able to live out that confidence is to let go of the stories that we make up about yourself and what we make up about others. So that really is that part of looking at different perspectives, especially because not everyone's going to see things the way we do. But then what are the things that we're telling ourselves? What are the stories we've created out about ourselves? Well, I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough education. I don't have I don't look a certain way, or I can't do what so and so does. That's that comparison. And so we got to let go of some of those stories so that we can create a new story. So it's kind of like cleaning out the attic. So if your brain is all filled with these stories of I can't and I'm not enough and it's not possible, then there's no room for possibilities to happen. So we got to clean all that out, let go of those stories, and because they don't serve you, they won't move you forward. They keep you halted. They keep you holding back. And then, of course, we need to act. So once we get aware and once we address a few things, then it's time to act. And knowing is not enough. So people say, well, now I know all these things and I've gone to all these classes and I've learned all these things. And so now it'll just be fine, right? Now I can just go do it. No, you have to consciously take a step, an action for you to be able to live out confidence, to know that you're confident so you can create those results that show that. So what actions are you willing to start? And it really just takes starting. What do you need to start doing to start building that confidence? And that really is what we're doing, is how do you build confidence? So we talked about that. Choose your mindset. Be aware of your mindset. Practice how you show up. Get feedback from others on how did they feel that you showed up confidently. What is the goal that you're trying to achieve, and how do you need to show up so that others see that that's what you're trying to achieve? What do you need to develop, or how do you need to equip yourself? What's the tools you need in your tool belt for various situations? Be clear about what you want to achieve. So if you say, I just want a job, then is that clear? Well, you'll just get a job, whatever kind of job. But if you say, I want a job that's from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I get paid this amount of money and there's room for advancement, you have a clearer target as to what kind of job that you want. You'll have a clear understanding of what's needed to reach that target. Then you got to manage your energy, your time and priorities. You got to create some boundaries for yourself. And then finally, focus on your results. If you don't know how you're doing, what do your results say? That's the lens that helps you identify how you're doing and whether you're achieving what you said that you want to achieve.
Well, Deb, this has been
So
fantastic.
you can do it. You can do it. So this is what we're saying. You can do it. And so what are if there's some of the questions or takeaways, we would love to hear them.
Fantastic. And if you could pull down your screen here, Deb,
Yep.
I think then I want to make sure I give you all the opportunity to do the poll and to give us that feedback. And then, yeah, pop your questions into the Q&A button at the bottom there. We would love to have Deb answer those for you. May need to pull King in. I'm not seeing the function for doing, oh, we've got a question. Oh, great question. So Kay from Atlanta is asking how you'll be able to watch the replay of the recording. So the recordings for all 4 of the sessions we're doing the month of May will be posted at the end of the month, and we will be sure to send you that link. Okay, happy to do that. Wonderful. So now you should all be seeing the poll. We would love to get your feedback. Please be sure to complete that. Any additional questions? Love to answer. Thank you, Kay. Very good. Any other questions on Deb's fantastic presentation tonight about wired for confidence, how we are wired for confidence?
Or if you want to share a takeaway, what was one thing that was a takeaway for you that was important for you to learn this evening? Was there an aha moment? If anybody wants to share that, we'd love to hear it.
Any takeaways? Love to hear it.
Oh, yeah. Anything. Don't be shy.
We're so grateful to have you all here tonight, and we wish you well and keep building that confidence.
And I'm going to show the last slide. So if people need my information, then you know how to get that. So just give me 1 second. If you want my info, let me share my screen. And we'll go to the last slide here. Maybe. There we go. So I want to thank you all so much for showing up this evening and being willing to listen to my going on and on. I do love confidence, and what I love is to find ways for people to elevate themselves. We all start somewhere, and we always want to go somewhere, and sometimes we don't know how to bridge that gap. And so it really starts with that you're worth it. And when you know you're worth it, then you'll do what you need to do to get to where you want to go. And so as I say to everyone, please write down my information. Feel free to email me. And as I tell everyone, go forth and be fabulous.
Go forth and be fabulous. Thank you. Oh, Kay says, I have a question.
Oh, awesome.
Go ahead, Kay. What is the best way to identify your passion? Ooh, that's a great question.
Oh, so again, you remember when we talked about the values, we talked about your drivers, what drives you, what gets you up to do what you do every day. That is one of the first places to start. So my passion is to learn. I want to learn what the truth is. I want to learn about all kinds of things. And I want to be able to do that in a creative and innovative way. So what that really means is I want to be the expert to find creative and innovative ways to learn and to teach others. And so I've created a whole business around that.
I love it. And one suggestion, like a real tangible one that I would suggest, is go to a bookstore and just watch where you gravitate towards. What section, what books, what content do you just find interesting, and you could just spend all day looking at each and every book in that section. And heck, you don't have to go to a bookstore. You don't have to buy anything. You could go to the library. So
yep. Or you could go on
one.
Google and just look at what, what is it that you're always looking at? What is it that you're always, is it you're connecting with people all the time? Are you looking up facts all the time? So that gives you another hint too. Are you wanting to be in service to others? And if you couldn't be in service to others, would that just feel like your life is empty? So, or do you want to develop others? So again, it's looking at what would get you up and out of bed, excited to do the day. And that really is your passion. So I get excited every day to get up and talk to people about them finding, owning, and living out their intrinsic worth. That excites me every day. Doesn't matter if it's a CEO of a company where they're making millions, or it's, a 15-year-old kid who's trying to figure out how to date in high school. So, I see the gamut.
Thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Go forth and be fabulous. Thanks, everyone.